Now, on my angle tonight, I want to talk about the President's diary. Yes, that book or whatever portal they use to schedule the President's engagements. And tonight I want to add a little item in there. Let me explain. You see, if you live in Kenya, you may have noticed a few changes in how the weather patterns work. Too unpredictable, too much rain when you least expect them, droughts coming on the back of floods, seasonal rivers drying up for longer, livestock dying in large numbers, shortage of food, certain diseases such as malaria showing up in places where they were unheard of before, and all that. Well, scientists have called the whole thing behind those trends climate change. A fairly technical term, but one which, as you can see, is perhaps a lot more relevant than, say, Tangatanga or Kieleweke. So what has the President got to do with this? What about his diary? Well, 3 years ago, Parliament passed a certain piece of legislation called the Climate Change Act 2016. This law is not very well known, and it was supposed to help the country in coping with the effects of these extreme weather-related events. That Act of Parliament created, among other bodies, an institution known as the National Climate Change Council, which was supposed to be chaired by none other than the President himself. To date, however, 3 years later, that council has not met, not once. And that is extremely serious. This is how. You see, that Climate Change Act has created a fund that is supposed to be used by counties, among other entities, to support communities that are already suffering. That money, amounting to about 1.8 trillion over the next 5 years, cannot be released until the council sits and approves it. You see what I mean? Billions of shillings earmarked for projects that could shield millions of Kenyans from hunger and disease is now all in limbo because this council has not met so that it can start work. Then there is something called the National Climate Change Action Plan, which, as the name suggests, contains all the actions the government and even private companies should take to deal with climate change. But guess what? That action plan, which should have been in full effect from last year, cannot be implemented until the council, chaired by the President, meets and ratifies it. And by the way, the action plan, which is a big document, has in its foreword a message from the President himself. And this is what he says, I quote, "Climate change is a major threat to Kenya's socio-economic well-being. It has the potential to roll back the development gains made over the years and threatens the attainment of our Vision 2030 and my government's Big Four agenda." End quote. And he is right, because according to various reports, droughts in late 2007 and early 2018 left 3.4 million people in this country starving, and an estimated 500,000 others were without access to water. In fact, the conclusion from the President in that opening message is encouraging. He says, I quote, "I personally commit to be at the forefront of these efforts as chair of the National Climate Change Council so as to ensure that our aspiration of a low-carbon, climate resilient and prosperous Kenya is realized." End quote. That tonight is the little thing I would like to add to his diary. Let him summon the National Climate Change Council, let it meet, and let it kick off this program that could save so many lives across the country. Because until that council is fully functional, every effort dealing with climate change in Kenya can only amount to half measures. Let us stop the climate of inaction. That is my angle tonight.